Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. A public inquiry has found blatant hypocrisy in the way major religious groups handle allegations of child abuse. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse said dozens of religious organisations within Christianity, Orthodox Judaism and Islam were morally failing children. The report follows similar inquiries into the Catholic and Protestant faiths. This inquiry found that religious leaders discourage the reporting of abuse to protect the reputations of their groups. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons has the details.
It's very difficult to form an identity and to be a whole person when you are on your own.
This is Sarah, born into the Jehovah's Witnesses, into a family dominated by the church. Effectively, you were sexually abused by both your father and your mother.
Yeah.
Your father when you were much younger, and your mother when you were a little bit older, and they had control over you. What was that like?
I don't really have words to describe what that was like, honestly. The sense of powerlessness and hopelessness.
Sarah's not her real name. She was taken into care. She settled by the sea for a new start, away from the witnesses.
They teach that everyone who is not a witness is part of Satan's world, or Satan's system, as they call it. That makes you, as a young person, terrified to trust anyone outside of the organisation, and at the same time, terrified to trust anyone inside of the organisation. It was very difficult.
It's a pattern repeated across 38 religious groups investigated by this inquiry, which has also examined the Catholic and Anglican churches.
The way that leaders are revered, the culture of community and not taking things outside of the community, so dealing with everything internally, not making outside authorities aware so that it can be looked at in the wider sense and making sure that the root causes of it are tackled, discouraging victims from reporting even within the organisation.
An example, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a policy that all child protection allegations have to be reported to the police. But inside the church, they also follow a biblical scripture, which says that all allegations must be supported by two witnesses. This report says that the two-witness rule should have no place in any response to child sexual abuse, which often happens with no witnesses. The church says it's committed to protecting children and will consider this report. In the Orthodox Jewish community, the inquiry heard about the concept of Mesira, not snitching, as one witness put it, on a fellow Jew to outsiders. But campaigners are concerned that this report does not hit religious organisations hard enough.
They have to raise the bar for religious organisations and not give them leeway because they have religion on their side. Religion does not equal good enough safeguarding.
The report is short on a solution to all this. But that's what those who suffered as children, including Sarah, are now using their adult voices to demand.
And Tom is with me now. Tom, is there any sense of how this can be prevented?
Solutions, that's what we all want to see, isn't it? I mean, Sarah's case is just one among many, and this report covered really religious organisations across the spectrum. It was careful not to point at any one organisation, but this is only part of the final work of this inquiry, which has been going on for some years now. They've done more than a dozen investigations into all walks of life and the child abuse failures that have taken place there. The big report is next year. It's going to be the final report by the independent inquiry. And they have one big decision, I think, to make, and that is whether to back a big change in the law, which is to introduce a reason to make people report child abuse, which has been one of the threads running through all of this. A change called mandatory reporting, which would say that it is a criminal offence if you have a reason, if you're in a position to report some concerns you have, not to do so. It's a controversial topic, it's legally tricky, but it's a big decision the inquiry has to make.
All right, Tom, thanks very much.
Sarah's parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. They sexually abused her for years. The elders within her organisation found out, but didn't tell the police, because there's no legal requirement to do so.
If there had been, then my case would have reached the police a lot sooner, many years earlier. It would have saved me from many years of abuse, and not just me, but the thousands of other cases.
Sarah, which isn't her real name, is a core participant to the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, which has produced a number of reports on the subject. Today's report returned to the subject of abuse in religious organisations, finding significant underreporting in religious settings and what it called shocking failings of moral hypocrisy, including victim blaming, and putting reputation protection above the need to address serious allegations. But campaigners say the two recommendations in the report, that all religious organisations should have a child protection policy and all religious education settings should be monitored by Ofsted, are too weak.
I'm extremely disappointed with it. It's a report that pulls its punches, lacks any meaningful, decisive rhetoric regarding the specific failings, and there are many of them.
The Jehovah's Witness organisation says it's considering the report and its criticisms, but notes it confirms that Jehovah's Witnesses have a policy to report allegations of abuse to the statutory authorities and that the policy is applied in practice. The abuse Sarah has suffered has left its scars, and the trauma of being taken into care has left her with what she describes as feelings of grief.
Giving the evidence to the inquiry and talking about this has really made me feel that grief.
What do you want to see happen as a result of this process?
For children to be protected, for the law to be changed and for mandatory reporting to be put in place so that no other children have to go through this.
Sarah will soon complete a nursing degree and is slowly putting the past behind her, but today's report has brought a lot of hurt to the surface once more. Nick Wallace, 5 News, Sussex.